Picture the largest private residence on Earth. Now fill it with 2,000 stoves that all want to kill you. Add 10,000 candles that drip burning wax onto parquet floors worth more than entire villages. Corridors so long that servants have been found frozen to death in them. A heating system made of wood and hot metal, threaded through walls made of more wood, and one emperor who has personally decreed the exact temperature of every single room. That's the Winter Palace in Saint Petersburg, the most magnificent building in the Russian Empire. Also, structurally speaking, the most beautiful bonfire ever assembled, just waiting for a match. A place where you could watch the Empress of all the Russias glide past in diamonds in the morning and spend the evening on your knees in a crawl space, scraping soot out of a flue with your bare hands, 40 feet above a ballroom. We're going back there tonight, not as guests at the ball, not as tourists gawking at the malachite and the gold. We're going in through the cellar door before dawn in the winter of 1837. 1 year, one person, everything he would have seen, smelled, carried, burned and survived, and one night in December that he would never, ever forget. So, I make these history stories, and honestly I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just lying there in the dark, wide awake, thinking about frozen servants and imperial chimney fires. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it, get comfortable. Here we go. The rule is simple, and it was explained to you on your first day with a hand gripping the back of your neck. You must never be seen. Not by the emperor, not by the empress, not by a grand duke, a lady in waiting, a chamberlain, or anyone wearing silk. You heat the palace. You feed its 2,000 stoves. You carry its firewood and haul its ash, and you do all of it as if you do not exist. If a door opens and a person of quality walks through it, you turn your face to the wall. If you're caught in a corridor with an armload of birch logs when the imperial family passes, you press yourself into the nearest niche and become furniture. There are servants in this building who have worked here for 30 years and have never once been looked at. And right now, at 4:30 in the morning, on the 2nd of January 1837, you are about to break that rule, because you are lost. Your name is Fyodor Stepanov. You're 17 years old. You've been inside the Winter Palace for exactly 9 days, and the building has already swallowed you twice. It is doing it again now. You're standing in a service corridor somewhere on the entresol level, the hidden half-floor squeezed between the grand floors, where the ceilings are so low you have to duck your head and the walls sweat, holding a canvas sling loaded with birch logs that weighs, you would guess, close to 2 poods, 70 pounds of frozen wood, cut on the Neva ice yards, still so cold from the courtyard stacks that the frost on the bark is burning through the canvas into your shoulder. Your fingers went numb 10 minutes ago. Your breath is smoking in the dark, and the candle stub in the tin lantern hooked to your belt is guttering, because you have been walking for a quarter of an hour through a building with 1,500 rooms and 117 staircases, and you cannot find stove number 41. Somewhere above your head, muffled through stone and plaster, a clock strikes the half-hour. Then another clock, a few seconds behind it. Then a third, thin and silvery, far away. There are said to be more clocks in this palace than there are hours in a year, and no two of them agree. Stove 41 serves the apartments of a lady-in-waiting to the Empress, and it must be lit, drawing properly, and closed again before 6. Because at 6 the lady's own maid rises, and the maid must never see you either. The hierarchy goes all the way down. The lady does not see the maid work. The maid does not see you work. You do not see the men who empty the cesspits. Everyone's labour is invisible to the person one step above them, and the whole golden building floats on top of it like a swan on black water, and the swan does not think about its own feet. If the stove is cold at 6, the maid complains to the lady. The lady says one word to a chamberlain. The chamberlain says one word to the palace commandant's office. And by evening, Yakov Grigoryevich, the senior stovemaster of your section, will take you into the wood cellar and explain the situation to you with a length of birch, and nobody in the Russian Empire will consider this remarkable in any way. So you keep moving. The floor under your felt boots is rough pine plank here, not parquet. The hidden floors are built plain, because no one who matters ever sees them. The corridor smells of cold ash, tallow, mouse, and the sour breath of the man who walked through here before you. Your shoulder is a bar of pain. You shift the sling and a log slides and you catch it against your hip with a grunt, and the bark scrapes a line of skin off the heel of your thumb, and you barely feel it because your hands are past feeling anything. Then, ahead, at the end of the corridor, a line of yellow light under a door, and voices, cultured voices, French. You freeze so completely that you can hear the frost crystals ticking off the logs as they melt. This is how you learn what the low corridors are for. The door does not open. The voices pass on the other side of it. A footman and someone else, moving along one of the true corridors, the wide marble ones with the mirrors, the ones you're forbidden to use. The light under the door dims and slides away. You breathe again, and your breath hangs in front of your face like a small ghost. Because this corridor, this hidden vein inside the warmest palace in the north, is cold enough to keep meat. That's the first secret of the Winter Palace, and you learned it within an hour of arriving. The palace is not warm. Parts of the palace are warm. The parts that are seen. The staterooms are kept at exactly 15 degrees Réaumur. The emperor has decreed it personally in writing, because Nicholas I is a man who decrees the temperature of rooms, the width of trousers, and the correct colour of carriage wheels. And the private apartments are warmer still, and the orangeries where they grow peaches in January are warmer than a summer afternoon. But the warmth is a garment the building wears on the outside of its body. Inside its walls, in the ducts and crawl spaces and service stairs where you live, the cold of the never comes straight through the brick, and the temperature is whatever God and the wind decide. You find stove 41 4 minutes later, almost by accident, by the smell. Every stove has its own breath. This one exhales yesterday's birch smoke and a faint sweetness, because the lady whose rooms it serves burns pastilles of amber and rose on the stove ledge, and the scent seeps backward through the firebox door into the service space. You will learn all of them eventually, Yakov says. He can walk the entresol blind drunk in a moonless December and name every stove by its smell alone. Number 60 smells of the doctor's camphor. Number 33 smells of dog, because the general keeps his borzois in the room. Number 19 smells of nothing at all, which is its own kind of information. The stove itself, from your side, is not the beautiful thing the lady sees. On her side of the wall it's a tower of white Dutch tile with blue ships painted on it. Warm to the palm, elegant as a church. On your side it's a black iron door in a brick face, set into a niche in the service corridor, with a heap of swept ash beside it, a bin of kindling, a tin of last week's grease, and the marks of 100,000 fires written on the brick in soot. The whole heating of the palace is built this way. double-faced like everything else here. Beauty on one side of the wall, you on the other. You go down on your knees on the plank floor. The cold comes through your trousers immediately, 2 flat, aching coins of it on your kneecaps. You unhook the lantern and set it where the light falls into the firebox, and you open the iron door and the hinge shrieks. You must bring grease tomorrow. You must remember. There is a list in your head now of 40 small duties, and it grows every day. And the sound goes off down the corridor like a bird being killed. Inside, the firebox is a black throat, still faintly warm from yesterday, breathing ash smell into your face. You reach in and rake the old ash forward with the short iron rake, and the ash comes in soft grey waves over the lip of the door into your pan, fine as flour. And no matter how carefully you pour, some of it climbs into the air and finds your nose and the back of your tongue, and you will taste it all day, under the bread, under the soup, under everything. Ash is the taste of your employment. Old men in your trade spit grey. Then the laying of the fire, which Yakov made you practice 30 times in the cellar before he let you near a real stove. Because a stove tender who lays a bad fire is not a man who's made a small mistake. Bark and shavings below, loose, with air in them. Fire is an animal, and it needs to breathe, Yakov says. Choke it, and it will sulk, and a sulking fire makes smoke, and smoke in a lady's bedchamber at 6 in the morning is the end of you. Then the splits of birch, laid crosswise, not too tight. Birch and only birch for the apartments, because birch burns clean and sweet. The alder and the pine go to the kitchens and the cellars, to people whose lungs don't matter. Then the fat pine splinter lit from your lantern candle. Your fingers are shaking now from cold, from hurry, and the first splinter gutters and dies, and you hear 6 o'clock coming toward you like a cart rolling downhill, and the second splinter catches, and you slide it into the nest of shavings, and you wait. This is the moment. Every stove tender knows it. The small silence between putting fire into the wood and finding out whether the chimney wants it. Because a chimney is a live thing too. It has moods. If the flue is cold, the column of frozen air inside it sits there like a plug, and the smoke, trying to rise, hits it and rolls back down into the firebox and out into your face. Or worse, seeps through some crack you can't see into the beautiful rooms, and lays a grey film on the silk and gives the lady a headache and gives you the cellar and the birch rod. So you crouch there with your face close to the iron door, listening. The flames find the shavings. There's the dry crackle, quick and gaining, like someone crumpling paper faster and faster. The light comes up orange on your hands, and you see how bad they've gotten in 9 days. The split knuckles, the black-rimmed nails, the burn on the left wrist already going shiny. And then you feel it, the pull. The air of the corridor begins to slide gently past your cheek, into the door, feeding the fire, and up. The chimney has accepted. The flue is drawing. The sound changes from crackle to a low, steady breathing roar, and the frozen birch begins to hiss and spit as the ice inside it turns to steam, and the heat comes out against your face like a hand, and for one moment, every morning, this one moment, you stop being cold, and it is the finest sensation available to you in the Russian Empire. Then you close the door to a crack, note the time by the strike of some far-off arguing clock, and stand up, and your knees crack like the kindling, and you gather the sling and the ash pan and the lantern, because stove 41 is one stove, and you have 11 more before breakfast. Welcome to the Winter Palace in the 1837th year of our Lord, the residence of Emperor Nicholas I, autocrat of all the Russias, 1,500 rooms, 117 staircases, nearly 2,000 doors, and beneath and between and behind all of it, several thousand people exactly like you, moving through the walls in the dark, carrying fire. You were not born for this place. You were born in a village near Tikhvin, in Novgorod province, in a one-room izba where the whole family slept on top of the great brick stove in winter, your grandmother's feet in your face, the calf breathing in the corner, and everyone was warm together in the fug and the dark. Your father is a serf on quit rent, an obrok man, which means his master lets him send his sons out to earn cash and takes his cut of everything. Your uncle Semyon has tended stoves in Petersburg for 20 years, and it was Semyon who got word to your father last autumn. The palace department was taking men. The pay was real money. A boy who kept his head down could send home more silver in a year than the village saw in 3. You walked and rode carts for 11 days to get here, with a spare shirt, a loaf, a small hard cheese, your baptismal cross, and a letter you cannot read. Back home, everyone said Petersburg would be like heaven. They weren't wrong exactly. Heaven is also a place where you're not supposed to be seen, in where everything depends on fire. By 7:30 you have lit your 12 morning stoves, and your arms are trembling in a fine, constant way that has nothing to do with fear, and you go down to eat. Down means down. The service world of the palace is vertical. The higher you go, the grander the people. The lower you go, the realer the work. Below the state floors are the entressols. Below the entressols, the ground floor with its guardrooms and offices. Below that, the cellars, which are a city. Wood cellars. The palace burns wood on a scale you could not have imagined. Whole forests are winter. The stacked billets running away into the dark in walls twice your height. An underground timber yard breathing cold resin and river ice. Wine cellars behind iron doors. Ice cellars packed in summer with Neva ice sawn out in blocks. Vaults of sand and water kept, in theory, against fire. And the corridors between them, where the stove tenders and the wood carriers and the watermen and the scrub women pass each other all day, and where at 7:30, at a plank table under a smoking lamp, you get your bread and your kasha and your tea. The tea is the good part. It comes brick-strong and scalding from a battered samovar the size of a church bell, and you wrap both ruined hands around the glass and let the heat crawl up through the split knuckles into the wrists, and for a while the ache in them changes key. The kasha is buckwheat, grey, shot through with enough butter that you know you're fed by an emperor and not a village. You eat fast, elbow to elbow with 40 other men, wood dust and ash on every collar, steam rising off wet felt boots by the stove. The talk is low and constant. Which flew on the 3rd section is smoking again, whose section got inspected, which footman upstairs is an informer, the price of boots, the price of tobacco, home. Half the men at this table are from Novgorod or Tver villages like yours. The palace pulls its heat labour from the same cold provinces, generation after generation, uncles bringing nephews, the way Semyon brought you. Across from you sits the man who owns your life, spooning kasha with terrible slowness, and you sit straight without being told to, because that is the effect Yakov Grigorievich has on the human spine. Yakov is 50 or 60 or 70, there is no way to know. He has the face of something carved to endure weather. 41 years in the palace. He was carrying wood up these stairs when Napoleon was in Moscow. He's not tall, but his hands are enormous, scarred, burn-glossed, the nails ridged like birch bark, and those hands can read a stove the way a priest reads a psalter. He lays a palm flat on a tile face and holds it there and tells you what is happening inside the brick, where the fire sits, whether the smoke path is fouling, whether the flue damper upstairs was closed too early by some fool and the whole system is sulking. He has taught you in 9 days perhaps 1/100th of what he knows, and your head is already swimming with it. Draught and damper, flue and baffle, which chimneys share a stack, which stoves answer to which wind, and above all the one commandment, delivered on your first evening with his hand on the back of your neck and his face close enough that you could smell the onion and the church incense on him. The damper boy, the Yushka. You will learn 1,000 things here, and they all matter less than this one. When you close the damper on a stove, you look at the coals first. You look with your eyes and you stir with the iron and you look again. If one coal, still shows blue flame dancing on it, the damper stays open. I don't care if the room cools. I don't care if a Grand Duchess is cold. A cold Grand Duchess is an unpleasantness. Blue flame with a damper shut is charcoal gas, and charcoal gas in a bedroom kills a family in their sleep and they never even wake to know it. It has no smell. It gives no warning. Every winter in this city it takes whole households, and it takes them warm and comfortable. You will be tired. You will be in a hurry. You will want to shut the damper and hold the heat and go to your bed. And that is the night it will be waiting for you. He said it, and then he said it again, word for word, like a litany, and then he made you say it back, twice. This morning he does not lecture. He finishes his kasha, drinks his tea through a lump of sugar held in his teeth in the old style, wipes his moustache with the back of his hand, and looks at you for the first time. 41 smoked, he says. It is not a question. Your stomach drops through the floor toward the wine cellars. It didn't, you say. It drew. I listened. It drew, he agrees, and something happens deep in the seams of his face that might, in a younger man, have been the ancestor of a smile. You laid it loose and it drew, and it took you until nearly 6 and you got lost twice on the entresol. And you froze like a rabbit when Andrei Ivanovitch walked past the door of the yellow corridor, and you scraped your hand, and you didn't grease my hinge. You stare at him. You have understood in 9 days that the palace watches everything, but you had thought that was the palace of the masters. It isn't. The real palace, the one in the walls, watches harder. Grease the hinge today, Yakov says, rising, taking up his cap. A hinge that screams is a stove tender announcing himself. We do not announce ourselves. And, boy, he pauses and delivers the sentence you will carry all year. In this house you will be cold so that others are warm, and unseen so that others are looked at. And if you do your work perfectly, no one who lives here will ever know you were alive. That is the trade. It is a better trade than the village. Now come, I'll show you the ducts. The ducts are the second secret of the Winter Palace, and they are the reason this story ends the way it ends. Though you don't know that yet, and neither does anyone else in Russia. Understand what this building is. From Palace Square it looks eternal, like a cliff of green and white stone that has always stood against the sky. 450 feet of façade, columns stacked on columns, statues along the roofline black against the winter light. The Empress Elizabeth ordered it. The architect Rastrelli built it. It is finished in 1762, which means it is 75 years old this year, which means there are men alive in this city whose fathers hauled its stones. It is the largest palace of the greatest autocracy on earth and the fixed point of the empire. From this building, one man's signature moves armies from the Baltic to the Pacific. But stone is only its skin. Inside, the winter palace is wood. The rafters of its vast roof pine, the floors oak and pine on timber joists. Whole interior walls that look like marble are timber and lath and plaster, painted to lie. The gilded ceilings hang from wooden beams, and through this timber body, when the old stove system couldn't warm the giant, they threaded heat. Yakov takes you, that morning and on many mornings after, through the hidden anatomy. Great stoves in the cellars and lower floors, furnaces really, whose fire heats air, and the hot air rises through ducts built inside the walls themselves, brick-lined channels and flues running up through the timber structure, opening into the staterooms through brass grills that the ladies warm their slippers over, without ever once asking where the warmth comes from. He shows you where flues from different ages of the palace's life run side by side, old chimney beside new duct, some abandoned, some altered, some connected in ways that no living man has fully mapped, because the palace has been rebuilt piecemeal for 75 years by 100 architects, and each one buried the last one's work behind new walls. He puts your hand flat against a stretch of ordinary painted wall in a service stair and holds it there. And through the plaster you feel it. Warmth. Deep, dry, constant warmth. Inside the wall itself, inches from timber that has been drying, has been seasoning, like wood stacked for the fire, for 3/4 of a century. You feel it, he says. Not a question, again. It's warm, you say. It is always warm, he says. Day and night, October to May, for longer than my whole life. And on the other side of that warmth is wood so dry it would light from a harsh word. He takes your hand off the wall. This is why we look at the coals, boy. This is why we grease the hinges and sweep the flues and crawl the ducts and lose our knees and our lungs doing it. The palace is a fire that has agreed so far to stay inside its iron doors. Our whole work, all of us, every day, is renewing the agreement. Then he straightens his back with a sound like green wood cracking and says, "Now." The emperor rises at 7 and walks the halls at 8, and if he finds dust on a grill he will notice, because he notices everything. God preserve him, and it will be my hide before it is yours. Move, and so the days take their shape, and you disappear into them. You rise at 4 in the room you share with 11 other men on the ground floor of the service wing. A low vaulted room, 12 iron cots, the air a solid substance made of sheepskin, foot wrap, tobacco, and man. You break the skin of ice on the washing water. You cross the great inner courtyard in the blue dark, where the cold comes off the Neva 100 yards away and goes through your sheepskin like it isn't there, -20, -25. The hairs in your nose freezing into wires with the first breath. The snow under your boots not crunching but squeaking, that high dry violin squeak that only real cold makes. The wood sledges are already creaking in through the gates, runners screaming on the packed snow, the horses smoking like samovars, breath icicles on their muzzles, and you load your sling by lantern light with logs so cold they burn to touch, frost-bearded, ringing against each other with a sound like dropped china. Then up, into the walls and the lighting of the fires, 12 stoves and then 18 as Yakov trusts you further, and then 26. Kneel, rake, lay, light, listen for the draw. Wait for the one warm moment. Close. Move. Your knees learn the floor of every nesh. Your ears learn the building's noises through the walls, the Preobrazhensky guards changing in the courtyard, boots in perfect unison like one enormous animal, the chapel choir seeping down through stone at morning service, so beautiful and so distant it seems to come from underwater. The endless small thunder of the kitchens, and twice, 3 times a week, faint as weather, music from far above, because somewhere up there in the light the season is happening. The balls, the receptions, 3,000 candles in one hall, and you know it only as a vibration in a duct and a doubling of your firewood quota. You learn the ash route, down the back stairs with the pans, out to the ash yard, where the wind takes a grey sheet of it off the top of every load and gives some back to your eyes and teeth. You learn the grease, the black tallow you work into hinges and damper rods with 2 fingers, until every iron thing in your section moves in silence, and the grease works into the cracks of your knuckles and will not wash out, so that your hands are now grey and black things you would be ashamed to show your mother at church. You learn the flue brush and the crawl. The crawl is the worst thing and you do it weekly. Some of the horizontal smoke channels can only be cleaned by a man going into them. Into a brick passage 2 feet high, on your belly, pushing a lantern ahead of you, dragging the brushes behind, in blood-warm blackness that smells of tar and burnt years, scraping creosote glaze off the brick over your own head so that it falls into your hair and eyes and down your collar, hard shiny flakes like black glass, and the passage presses on your shoulders and the fear presses on your chest, and you can hear your own heart against the brick floor, and somewhere below your belly, through 18 inches of masonry, is the gilded ceiling of a hall where an empress dances. You come out an hour later, black to the skin, spitting black, weeping black tears from scoured eyes, forearms trembling, and Ilya, the boy who works the section beside yours, 16, from Tver, with ears like jug handles and an unkillable grin, hauls you out by the ankles and looks at your face and says, as he says every single week, "Your Excellency, welcome back from Africa." And every single week, God forgive you, it makes you laugh. Ilya is the other thing that keeps you alive. He came a year before you. He knows things. He knows which cook trades bread ends for kindling scraps. He knows the loose grating behind which you can stand and see, actually see, with your own eyes, through a heat grill at floor level. A corner of the Jordan staircase, that white and gold cascade of marble down which, on the 6th of January at Epiphany, the entire court will descend to the frozen Neva for the blessing of the waters. Uniforms and diamonds and priests with gold-smoked censers, the emperor a full head taller than every man near him, walking out onto the river ice to where a hole has been cut in the shape of a cross, while the cannon fire from the fortress across the river, and you watch through a brass grill at boot level, on your knees in a duct, with your face striped by the light like a prisoner. Ilya finds this arrangement hilarious rather than bitter, and his laughter is contagious, and you decide early that you will stay near it. It gets easier, he tells you at night, across the 2 feet of dark between your cots, in the room where 12 men snore in 6 keys. First month, you cry into the pillow. Everyone does. Don't argue, I heard you Tuesday. Second month, your hands stop bleeding. By summer, you'll walk the entresol in the dark like Yakov. By next winter, you'll be teaching some new calf from Novgorod. And in 40 years, you'll be a terrifying old man with a moustache, beating the fear of charcoal gas into children. It's a life. Better than the village. Nobody here has taken my teeth yet, and the emperor pays for the butter in the kasha. You lie in the dark and listen to the palace above you, the clicks and ticks and sighs of a wooden giant cooling. And you think, he is right, it is a life, and you fall asleep counting stoves instead of sheep, and you never once suspect the year you've walked into. Because this is January of 1837, and this palace, this exact building, has 11 months left to live, and not one soul in it knows. On the 6th of January, 8 days before you meet the Emperor in the corridor, you see the empire perform itself, through a brass grill, on your knees, and it is Ilya who arranges the tickets, the blessing of the waters. Epiphany, the greatest fixed ceremony of the Russian winter, held every 6th of January since before anyone's grandfather. The entire court descends from the palace to the frozen Neva, where a pavilion has been built on the ice over a hole cut in the shape of a cross. The Jordan, they call it, after the river in Palestine, because on this day the Neva is the Jordan, and Petersburg is the Holy Land, and the water itself becomes medicine. And 2 floors of the palace between the staterooms and the river are threaded with heating ducts, and one of those ducts, as Ilya discovered in his first winter and guards like a family estate, has a floor-level grill with a sightline down a marble gallery to the Jordan staircase itself. You do your morning stoves at a run. By 9 you're both flat on your bellies in the duct, shoulder to shoulder, faces at the grill, in the blood-warm dark with the smell of hot brass and dust, like 2 boys under a table at a wedding, and the empire comes past your nose. First sound, the whole building filling from the top down, a sea noise of feet and voices pouring toward the staircase. Then the gallery before you floods with it. Boots first. You're at boot level. This is a parade of boots. Cavalry boots mirror bright. Court shoes with buckles. The soft red boots of a Circassian prince. The felted tread of servants along the walls. Then, kneeling as the procession forms, the people above the boots swing down into your slot of vision in strips. White uniforms crusted with gold like frost on a window, the deep green of the guards, sashes of sky blue and blood red, fur pelisses thrown open in the indoor heat your stoves made, and the ladies, the Empress's ladies in the Russian court dress, velvet trains of crimson and emerald sliding past your grill close enough to touch, the gold thread in them catching the candlelight in moving sparks and diamonds when a throat or a wrist dips into view, giving off their cold, specific fire, and over the whole river of it a tide of scents your nose will never meet again in one place. Incense, French perfume, furs, candle wax, pomade, and under it all, faint and human, and somehow the most reassuring thing in the world, sweat. Because it is hot in a full gallery, and an ermine cloak is an ermine cloak even for a Grand Duchess. Then the singing starts and you stop noticing your knees. The court choir, unaccompanied, the deep Russian church harmony with basses in it that go below the floor of hearing, so that the duct itself sings around you, the brick humming against your chest. You feel the music in your sternum before your ears, the way you feel a chimney draw. The procession moves, priests in vestments of white and gold, the smoke of the censers rolling low and crawling along the floor to your grill and in, so that you breathe the same incense as the emperor, an economy of God that makes Ilya shake beside you with silent laughter, and the metropolitan with his white cowl, and the cross going by at boot height carried low on its staff, and then a stillness in the marching sea, a bow wave of turned heads, and the boots you will recognize 8 days later in a corridor, enormous, mirror black, pendulum steady, one pace ahead of all the others, going down to the ice of his river to watch a cross dipped 3 times into water cold enough to stop a heart, while the fortress guns count the moments across the Neva. You hear them even in the duct, felt through the building's bones. 12, 14, 20, 31, the ceremonial 101 beginning, each concussion arriving twice, once through the air of the grill, and once through the brick under your ribs. And here is what stays with you, of all of it, not the diamonds. Afterward, when the court has flowed back up and the gallery is empty and you two are still lying there letting your legs come back to life, the servants' side of the ceremony passes the grill, footmen carrying, with the exact care of men carrying gunpowder, flagons and jugs of the blessed water, taken from the cross-shaped hole in the river, bound for the apartments, because everyone in the palace, from the empress to the scullery, will drink Jordan water today and keep a bottle of it against illness through the year. And it is the one substance in this entire building that flows uphill against rank, the same water into every mouth. And behind the flagon bearers comes a boy your own age from the water detail, lugging 2 wooden buckets of it on a yoke for the lower floors, walking splay-footed under the weight exactly the way you walk under wood, and as he passes your grill 1 bucket slops, and a rope of blessed never water uncoils through the air and slaps the marble, and the boy says with feeling a word that has never once been said in church, and marches on. Ilya has to press his face into his sleeve. You have to press yours into yours. The 2 of you lie in the warm dark over the empty shining gallery, snorting like horses, holy smoke in your hair, cannon still counting outside, and that, the diamonds and the swearing bucket boy, 6 feet apart on the same marble, both of them Russia, both of them true. That is your epiphany, and you would not trade it for a place in the front rank. That night at the table, when the older men asked, "Did you see anything of the ceremony?" you and Ilya say, "No, work through it, and eat your kasha with the faces of saints." The first time you see the emperor, you nearly drop a full pan of ash on the floor of a corridor in the private wing, and the only reason you're still alive to fall asleep tonight is that your hands, by late January, are smarter than your head. It happens at 8 in the morning, which you should have foreseen, because 8 in the morning is when Nicholas Pavlovich walks. Everyone in the walls knows his schedule better than the chamberlains do. Your lives are built around it the way a village's life is built around the sun. He rises before 7. He sleeps, and everyone in the palace knows this too and finds it either magnificent or mad, on a narrow camp bed, an army cot with a straw-stuffed leather mattress, in a plain study on the ground floor, under a soldier's greatcoat instead of a blanket. The master of the largest palace on earth, a building with rooms upholstered in actual gold, chooses to sleep like a lieutenant on campaign, in a room you could fit into his wife's smallest drawing room, because he believes down to his bones that he is not a man enjoying an empire but a sentry standing a post, and a sentry does not sleep soft. His people are told this and repeat it with pride. You, personally, tend the modest stove that serves that study, which means you, personally, are responsible for the night warmth of the autocrat of all the Russias, which is a thought you take out and look at sometimes, kneeling in the service niche the way you'd look at a coin too large to spend. At 8 he walks, fast, alone or nearly, through the halls, an inspection without warning, because he trusts no report he has not verified with his own pale eyes. And this morning his route folds without warning into the corridor where you are crouched with the ashpan, 1 heartbeat from the safety of the service door. You hear the boots first, not hurried, worse than hurried, regular, unstoppable, like a pendulum walking. Then the corridor fills. He is enormous. That is the fact no portrait had prepared you for. 6'3" in an era of small men, chest like a stove face, and above the high collar a face that has been described across Europe as the handsomest and the coldest of the age. The profile of a statue, grey-blue eyes with a strange pewter flatness to them, eyes that famously make ambassadors need to sit down. He is in a plain dark uniform coat. No medals at this hour. An aide follows 3 steps behind at a half-trot. Your body does what Yakov trained into it before your mind can ruin anything. You come off your knees, you turn, you press your back and your burden into the wall niche, you fix your gaze on the floor moulding, and you become an object. The ashpan is a tray of grey feathers balanced on your 2 shaking hands. One shiver will send up a cloud of it in the path of the Emperor of Russia, and your entire future depends on the steadiness of 2 frost-bitten 17-year-old wrists. The boots come on. They do not pause, and then they pause. You do not look up. You will remember the next 4 seconds for the rest of your life, and at 80 you will still be able to feel them on your skin. You see at the bottom edge of your vision the boots, mirror black, immense, halt 1 full stride away. You feel yourself being read, the way Yakov reads a stove, a flat palm of attention laid against you, taking your temperature. The pewter eyes go over the ashpan, the greased hinge rag over your shoulder, your blackened hands, your face turned obediently to the wall. Somewhere in the building a clock strikes and another disagrees with it. Then a voice above you, not to you, to the aide, a voice like the rest of him, deep, even, machine regular. The grills on this corridor were dull yesterday. Today they are clean, and the boots resume, pendulum steady, and diminish and are gone. You stand in the niche until your legs come back. A film of ash has risen off the pan after all and is settling slow as snow on your sleeves. He noticed the grills, yesterday and today. In a building of 1,500 rooms, the autocrat of all the Russias tracks the polish on heating grills in a service corridor, and the polish was yours, done at 11 at night with a rag and brick dust because Yakov said the Emperor notices, and you had not fully believed a man could notice everything, and now you believe. That evening, at the plank table, you tell it, trying to keep your voice level and failing, and the older men nod without surprise. They have their own stories, and out they come with the tea, the palace's own scripture, the legends of the century Tsar, that he answers ministers' reports in the margins in his own hand at 1 in the morning, that he goes to fires. This one stops you, and they repeat it. It is true, and half of Petersburg has seen it, that when a serious fire breaks out in the city, the Emperor of Russia gets up, dresses, and drives to it personally, and stands in the smoke and gives orders like a fire chief, because he cannot endure the idea of a disaster in his capital proceeding without him, and that he fears God, and after God, disorder, and after disorder, nothing whatsoever. And old Matvey, who is the oldest man in the cellar and mostly speaks to his tea, lifts his head and says the thing that the room lets sit in silence afterward. He is the master of 1/6 of the whole earth, and he sleeps on straw under an army coat, colder than any of us. Whatever else, no man can say the master asks for a softness he doesn't share. And you think of the modest stove in the plain study, your stove, and of the narrow iron cot beside it, and of your own narrow iron cot below, and you feel, you cannot help it, you're 17 and Russian, and it is 1837. a strange vertical thread connecting the two beds through 6 fathoms of palace, straw to straw, century to century, and you sleep that night oddly proud and entirely unaware that you've just met the man beside whom you will stand 11 months from now in the light of the biggest fire either of you will ever see. In February, for the first time, the palace lets you out of its body in daylight, and you meet the city you have technically been living in for 6 weeks. It happens because of Greece, of all things. The tallow supplier on the Moika has shorted the department. Yakov is at war with the clerk about it, and somebody trustworthy with 2 working legs must go along the embankment to the warehouse with a chit and come back with 40 pounds of black tallow in a shoulder cask. Trustworthy is a promotion. 2 working legs you have. You cross the small courtyard, pass the gate guards, step through the arch, and stop dead in the middle of Palace Square like a plank standing on end, because you have been living for 6 weeks inside the largest building you've ever seen, and you have never once seen it. Take a breath with him here, because he takes one. The square is a frozen plain, so wide that the far side of it is a different weather. The General Staff Building curves around it in a bow half a verst long, yellow and white, with its great arch topped by a chariot of victory. 6 bronze horses black against a sky the colour of a knife. The palace behind you goes up and up. You turn around and crane like the villager you are, cap sliding back. Tier on tier of columns, the roofline crowded with statues wearing epaulets of snow, and in the centre of the square, closer to God than anything you have ever stood beside, is the column. You know what it is. Everyone in Russia knows what it is. The Alexander Column, raised 3 years ago, 1834, you were a boy of 14 hoeing turnips when the whole empire talked of it, to the Tsar who beat Napoleon. But knowing and standing under it are 2 different kinds of knowledge. It is a single piece of red granite. 1 stone. 84 feet of polished stone in 1 piece. 600 tons of it, cut from a cliff in Finland, floated here on a barge built for nothing else, and stood upright on its base in 1 hour and 45 minutes by 2,000 soldiers and 3,000 men hauling on capstans while half of Petersburg held its breath. And it is not fastened. That is the fact that finds you in the knees. Yakov told it to you at the table and you didn't believe him. And it is true, and every guardsman confirms it. The column is attached to its pedestal by nothing but its own weight. 600 tons of granite balancing on its base like a glass on a tray, with an angel on top holding a cross. And it has stood through 3 winters of Neva gales, and the ladies of the city were afraid to drive past it at first, and the engineer Montferrand, they say, walked his little dog under it every evening on purpose, to teach the city not to flinch. You stand at the base with your empty cask on your shoulder and your head all the way back, and the low sun comes across the square and lights the granite, so that it glows dark red like an iron left too long in the forge, and the angel high up catches fire at the tips of its wings, and around you the whole square creaks and jingles with sledges and boots and harness bells. Nobody else looking up, everybody late for somewhere. The men who raised this were paid men like you. 2,000 of them heaved on ropes for 2 hours one August morning, and now their work will stand here until the Last Judgment, unfastened, holding itself up, and not one name of theirs is written anywhere on it. You will think of that again 11 months from now, standing in this exact spot at 2 a.m. with the sky on fire. But today, you don't know that. Today you just look until your neck aches, And then the cold finds the gap between your collar and your cap and reminds you that you are a working man with a chit in his mitten, and you go. The walk along the Moika is its own education. Petersburg in hard frost is a city seen through smoke. Every chimney of every house pouring straight up in the windless cold, hundreds of white columns leaning all one way like a forest under water, and under them the city going about its business at -20 as if -20 were a rumour. Water carriers with their barrels on sledge runners, ice thick on the barrel hoops. A cab stand where the drivers, bearded to the eyes, sit their little sledges wrapped like cargo, arguing about fares through frozen moustaches. An officer's lady passing in a swan's down hood, giving off a thread of scent. Real perfume, French, the first you've ever smelled, that cuts through the street's honest stew of horse, smoke, and frost for exactly 1 second and is gone, like a sentence in a language you will never learn. Shop signs painted with pictures instead of words, boots and pretzels and sugar loaves for the customers who read the way you read. And under everything, underfoot, the other city sound you will never forget. The deep, occasional, offhand boom of the river ice shifting somewhere beyond the buildings, like a door slamming in a cellar the size of a province. At the tallow warehouse, a clerk with mittens on makes you wait half an hour in an unheated office as a matter of principle, some principle of his own about palace people thinking themselves grand. You stand and steam gently and study the frost ferns on the inside of his window, which are the most beautiful things in the room, including the clerk. The cask, full, is a different animal from the cask empty. 40 pounds riding your right shoulder, the wooden rim finding the exact groove the wood sling has already worn into you, and by the halfway mark of the walk home, your right side has gone from ache to burn to a kind of loud silence, and you learn the porter's trick nobody teaches. You stop fighting the weight and build your walk around it, shorter steps, straighter spine, and give your mind a bone to gnaw so it stops listening to the shoulder. The bone your mind chooses that first time is the column. One stone, not fastened, held up by being heavy. There is a sermon in that somewhere for a man with a cask on his shoulder, and you are 17, and you find it, and it gets you home. And that same week, because the world believes in paying you 2 coins at once or none for a month, you're introduced to the single greatest institution of your new life, the one you will describe in letters home dictated to the literate Ilya, with genuine emotion, the bathhouse. The palace people have their banya rights at an establishment 2 streets back from the stables. Saturdays, in shifts, and your first Saturday Yakov himself jerks his chin at you after the midday meal and says one word, "Come," and you learn that the terrifying old man of the flues is, in the steam, a different creature entirely, a connoisseur, a philosopher, very nearly a happy man. You've been washing since January out of a basin, in a room where the water grows a skin of ice. You had forgotten, in the marrow, what heat given rather than carried feels like. The steam room is a low timber cave lit by one small window, and the heat in it is a substance, a hand pressing down on your shoulders as you climb to the second bench. The air scalds the inside of your nose sweetly with birch and hot stone and tar soap, and when the attendant throws water on the stones, the steam comes off them with a crack like a whip, and rolls over you in a wave that finds every crack in your winter knuckles at once, a bright singing sting, and then unlocks them. Yakov, scarlet, blissful, beats your back and shoulders with the soaked birch venicky in a rhythm older than the city. The leaves plastering and peeling, the smell of a summer forest breaking out of them in the middle of February, and he delivers between strokes the only entirely unsolicited piece of tenderness you will ever get from him. The steam takes out what the stoves put in, boy. 41 years it has taken it out of me. Keep your Saturdays holy and your flues clean, and you'll bury us all. Afterward you sit wrapped in a sheet in the cooling room among red-boiled giants drinking tea from saucers, your whole body ringing like a struck bell, every burn and crack and frozen corner of you accounted for and answered, and you understand that the week has a shape now. 6 days you carry heat to others, and on the 7th, heat carries you. You dictate to Ilya that Sunday, for 2 kopecks and a sugar lump, your first letter home since arriving. It says the work is good, the food has butter in it, you have been to the bath, you have seen the Emperor and the Great Column, you are sending 11 roubles with the Tikvin carrier at Easter, you kiss dear mother's hand. Ilya, writing, adds on his own initiative and over your objection a line stating that you are grown so handsome that grand ladies faint on the staircases, and refuses to scratch it out, on the grounds that your mother deserves some joy in winter, and this is the letter that goes, and this, months later, is the letter your mother will have read to her 4 times by the deacon, and the faint of the grand ladies, Semyon reports in autumn, is now established fact in 3 villages. There is a lesson in that too about what paper does to things, but you will not need that lesson until the inquiry after the fire, and we are not there yet. It is only February. The palace has 10 months to live, and the snow keeps falling on the angel's wings. At the end of January the city goes quiet in a way you don't understand, and then you do, and it is the first time the great world reaches down into the cellars and touches everyone at once. It comes to you as a change in the sound of the palace. The dance music stops. The duct that carries the ballroom's vibration down to your section goes still in the middle of the season, mid-carnival, when it should be trembling 4 nights a week. Then the whispering starts at the plank table, and it is not about flues. A duel, someone says, out past the Black River in the snow. The poet, someone says, and you ask which poet, and the whole table looks at you, and Ilya says quietly, for once not grinning, Pushkin, you birch log. There is only one. You cannot read. You've never read one line the man wrote, but you know the name the way you know the name of the Neva, because everyone knows it. The coachmen know it, the water carriers know it. Your uncle Semyon quotes 2 lines of him when he is drunk and weeps, the same 2 lines, every time. And for 2 days the palace, above and below, breathes strangely, because the poet is lying in an apartment on the Moika embankment, a 10-minute walk from where you kneel with your ashpan, with a pistol ball in him, dying, and the city stands in the street outside his door in the frost. Thousands of people, silent, waiting, stamping their feet, their combined breath rising over the crowd like smoke over a village. On the 29th of January he dies, and something happens in Petersburg that you will not see again until the fire. The ranks dissolve. Counts and cab drivers stand in the same line. It is said, it comes down to the cellar with the tea, everything comes down with the tea, that so many thousands came to bow to the body, that they took the wall down between 2 rooms to let the river of people through, and that the authorities, alarmed by grief, as they are alarmed by any large feeling, moved the coffin away at midnight in secret with gendarmes. And you, who cannot read him, you find you have your own small corner of it, because sorrow in a palace is measured in firewood. The apartments go quiet. Certain great persons receive no one, and in one set of rooms on your section, A countess known for her hard economy of candles orders her stove kept burning day and night for a week, extravagantly, wastefully, and her maid tells the corridor footman, who tells the waterman, who tells you, that her mistress sits by the tile face at 2 a.m. with a book of the poems against her chest, not reading, only holding, and cannot be persuaded to bed. And so for 1 week in the frozen heart of the winter, you carry double wood up the back stairs, thighs burning, breath sawing, so that a woman you will never see can grieve warm over words you will never read. And this, Yakov says when you tell him, is the whole trade in one picture. We do not get the poems, boy. We get the carrying. Somebody has to hold the house up while the people in it feel things. He says it without bitterness. You look for the bitterness in it for a long time afterward, on your own account, and you honestly cannot find where it should go. The warmth was real. Your legs made it. Let that be your line of the poem. Winter breaks in April with the breaking of the Neva, and that is a public event of its own. The ice going out with sounds like artillery, plates of it the size of threshing floors grinding and rearing against the granite embankment right below the palace windows, the whole city coming out to watch, and by old custom the fortress commandant crossing the first open water to bring the emperor a glass of never water, and the cannon speaking and the river alive again. The wood sledges become wood barges. The murderous cold lets go of the courtyard. Your hands unbelievably heal. The grey cracks close. You had forgotten your own knuckles. And then comes the strangest season of your new life, summer, when the family leaves for the islands and the country palaces, and the winter palace stands nearly empty, and the fires go out. You expect rest. You are 17. You are owed 1 era of optimism per year. Instead, summer is when the walls are opened. This is the season of soot and repair, when the stove tenders and the sweeps and the masons go through the whole silent giant, room by room, flue by flue, dampers unbolted and reground, fireboxes relined, cracked tiles swapped, and above all the crawls. The long crawls now, the deep ones, the horizontal channels you clean once a year, in the July heat, when the ducts are ovens even cold, and the creosote smell in them thickens until you can chew it. You spend whole days inside the palace's bones, and it is in this season, on your belly in the dark with a lantern, that you begin to truly know the thing you've been feeding all winter, and to find what Yakov's generation found before you, and their fathers before them, and what everyone reports and no one ever fixes. Because the deeper you go, the older it gets, and the older it gets, the stranger. You find flues that end nowhere, bricked off blind, their purpose forgotten with the architect who drew them. You find timber, actual house timber, joist ends and lath, passing within a hand's width of smoke channels, the wood browned like bread crust, hard and light and ringing, kiln-dried by 75 winters of warmth. You find a place, and you will remember finding it, where an old chimney of Rastrelli's day stands separated from a duct of the new heating by a thin patched partition, and when you hold your candle near the patchwork, the flame leans, a draught, a connection where no connection should be. Air moving through the private darkness of the walls, from one age of the palace into another, along paths that exist on no drawing in any office in the empire. You back out and report it, as you report everything, and Yakov comes and lies down in the duct himself, an old man on his belly with a lantern, silent for a long time, and what he says when he comes out is not what you expect. He says, "I reported that draft to the Office of Works in the year 19. Philip, God rest him, reported it before me, under the old emperor. It is written down somewhere 3 times over in beautiful ink. He sits on the duct edge and wipes his face, and looks suddenly every one of his years. A palace is like an empire, boy. From the square stone eternal one piece. Inside patches on patches, every rain mending the last one in a hurry before a feast, and the papers all in order, and nobody alive who has seen the whole of it. He slaps the warm brick twice the way you'd slap the neck of an old horse you loved and did not fully trust. She has stood 75 years. Pray she's patient, and grease your hinges. You're 17, you grease your hinges, and the summer passes, and the family returns, and in October the fires go back into the iron doors, 2,000 of them, and the great agreement resumes, and the walls warm up around their old dry timber, and their patched partitions and their drafts written down 3 times in beautiful ink, and the season begins, and now it is December. And the summer gives you one more thing, the thing you will describe on your deathbed 60 years from now to a bored grandson who will suddenly stop being bored. The roof. It is June, White Nights. And if you have never heard of the White Nights of Petersburg, hold still, because this is real, and it happens every year. For weeks around midsummer, this far north, the sun barely sets. It slides along under the horizon like a coal under ash, and midnight is not dark but a long, pale, silver and apricot dusk in which you can read a letter in the street. Those who can read. And the whole city goes gently strange, nobody sleeping properly, boats on the river at 1 in the morning, girls singing on the embankments in broad twilight. And it is in this season that the flue work goes up top, because the chimneys must be seen to from above as well as below, and Yakov's knees no longer love ladders, and so it is you and Ilya who go out through the little iron door in the attic, up the last ladder, and out onto the roof of the Winter Palace at 11 o'clock on a June night. With brushes and a rope you're supposed to use and don't. The roof is a country. You knew it would be big. You did not know it would be a landscape. Acres of painted iron sheet, still faintly warm from the day, ticking as it cools, sloping up and down in ridges and valleys like frozen surf, with the forest of chimneys standing out of it, hundreds of them, each one crowned with its smoke cap, and among them the huge green-stained statues along the parapet, seen now from behind, from their own side, gods and trophies with pigeon nests behind their shields, and their calm, blank shoulders facing the city. Up here the palace's 2 worlds finally stand in one place, the statues for the square and the chimneys for you, mixed together on the last floor of all, where nobody comes but the wind, the birds and the men who mind the smoke. You finish the section's work by midnight. Brush, sound the pots, note 2 cracked crowns for the masons. And then, because you're 17 and 16 and it is the White Nights, you and Ilya do the thing that would get you flogged and is worth it. You climb the long, low pitch to the ridge above the riverfront and sit down on the warm iron with your boots braced in a valley and look. And there it is, the whole of it, what the angel on the column sees. The Neva lies below you, full to its granite brims, moving, enormous, the colour of pewter and rose, with the light lying along it in a path that goes all the way to the sea. Directly across, the Peter and Paul fortress floats on the water, like a crown someone set down, its cathedral spire a needle of gold taking the unset sun, and beneath that spire, you know, lie all the emperors in their stone boxes, Peter and Catherine and Alexander of the Column, sleeping in the middle of their river, Eastward, the water splits around the point of Vasilyevsky Island with its 2 red lighthouse columns. Westward, masts, 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 the sea trade standing in the roads, and the low sun beyond them at midnight, sitting fat and orange on the rim of the gulf like a stove door left open at the edge of the world. Behind you, inland, the city smokes gently from 1,000 kitchen chimneys under the silver sky. The Admiralty spire, the dome of St. Isaac's rising slowly inside its cage of scaffolding, streets running away in straight lines the way no village lane ever ran, as if drawn with a ruler by a hand that never got tired. Below your boot heels, under 18 inches of iron and timber, the ballrooms lie dark, and the corridors you crawl are ticking softly to themselves, and in one plain room on the ground floor a man is probably still awake at his desk, answering ministers in the margins, guarding 1/6 of the earth in his shirt sleeves. Ilya beside you is quiet for the longest stretch you've ever known him to manage. Then he says, in the tone of a man conceding a point in an old argument, "All right, it's a city," and you both start laughing, at nothing, at everything, the way you laugh at that age on a warm roof at midnight in June, and the laughter runs off the iron and down over the parapet and falls into the never, and the statues do not turn around, and the sun does not set, and for 1 hour of your 17th year you are the highest person in the Russian Empire with the possible exception of the angel. You will be on this roof once more in your life, in December, for a very different reason. The iron under you then will be hot in a way no June ever made it, and the light on the river will be coming from below. But that is December's business. Tonight the roof is warm the honest way from the day's sun, and the 2 of you sit up there until 2, until the light begins impossibly to strengthen again, dawn arriving before night ever quite managed to, and then you go down the ladder into the sleeping giant, boots quiet on the rungs, and Ilya whispers into the attic dark the summary that you will steal from him and use all your life. We live in the roof of the world, Fedya, and nobody down there knows our names, and I wouldn't trade with a single one of them tonight. The court returns in October like weather changing, and you feel it first, as you feel everything through the stoves. For a week beforehand the orders come down. This wing warmed from Tuesday, these apartments from Thursday, the staterooms brought up slowly. Slowly. Yakov drills you. A cold palace warmed fast. Weeps. The walls sweat. The parquet cups. The paintings suffer. You bring 75 years of timber up to temperature the way you bring a frozen man to a fire gradually, or you do him harm. So for 7 days you and the whole brotherhood of the walls perform the great autumn kindling, section by section, floor by floor, 2,000 cold iron doors opened and fed and coaxed, the flues cranky after their summer idleness, the first fires smoking and sulking until the chimneys remember their trade, and the building filling day by day with warmth from the bottom up like a jug filling with milk. And then one morning the courtyard is suddenly loud with carriages and vans, mountains of trunks, footmen shouting, dogs, bird cages, a piano swinging on ropes, and the family is back, and the palace opens its eyes, and is itself again, and your 4 in the morning life resumes as if June had never happened. And in November comes your first great ball on the inside. Inside meaning your side, the wall side. And you finally learn what that trembling in the ducts was made of, all last winter, and it is the hardest single night of work in the palace year, and it is one of the wonders of the world, and both of those are true at once and 4 feet apart with plaster between. Understand what a great ball at the Winter Palace is from underneath. Upstairs it is the thing Europe gossips about. Thousands of guests, The staterooms opened in enfilade so that you can stand in one doorway and see through 7 rooms of light. The orchestra, the Polish opening promenade with the emperor leading, suppers where pineapples grown under your comrades' heat are stacked like turnips at a fair. Downstairs it is a battle with logistics. Candles first. A great ball burns candles by the tens of thousands. Wax above, for the light is part of the spectacle, and every one of those candles is set, lit, watched and changed by hand, and the heat of 10,000 flames plus 3,000 bodies turns the ballrooms into ovens even in December, so that now, tonight only, the whole art of your trade runs backward. The stoves in the staterooms are let die by the afternoon, dampers set for the sucking heat of the crowd, and the war is fought instead for air. Ventilation flaps worked by hand in the attics on shouted orders relayed down the service stairs, men stationed at duct doors all night literally opening and closing the palace's breathing as the halls fill and empty, and you are one of them. Posted in a hot, dark space above a cornice with a lamp and one iron flap, and orders to work it on command. And through the grill beneath you comes everything. The light in golden bars, the smell of wax and crushed flowers and hot silk and punch, and the music which you have only ever felt as vibration now arriving whole. Waltzes rising up the duct as up an organ pipe, so loud and near and glorious in your hot little dark that you have to remind your own boots not to move, and the roar between dances of 3,000 people talking, which from above sounds exactly, Ilya is right, like the wood cellar sounds when the spring floodwater used to run into it. A river filling a vault. You work the flap till 2 a.m. Below you Russia dances. Above the ceiling in the dark its temperature is being played like an instrument by tired men in felt boots of whom you are the youngest. Twice an officer of the palace administration comes through the attic, run with a lantern, checking posts, and the second time he stops, looks at you sweating at your flap in the lamplight, and says, to himself, in the voice of a man doing sums, 16 on the flaps, 40 on candles, wood details doubled. A ball costs more below stairs than above, if anyone counted, and is gone. He is the only person of rank you will ever hear say it, and he said it to a duct, and past 3, when the last carriages have gone and the halls stand empty and blazing, and the extinguishing details move down the enfilade putting out 10,000 candles with brass cones on poles, a slow tide of dark following them room by room, which from your grill is the most beautiful thing you saw all night. Better than the diamonds, light dying backward through 7 doorways like the palace falling asleep. After that, when you finally come down the service stair with your lamp, you pass along the edge of the great hall itself, permitted for once because the floor must be checked for live wax embers, and you stand for 1 minute alone in the middle of a ballroom the size of your native village, in the smell of smoke and roses, wax hardening on the parquet in little grey coins, one forgotten glove lying on a chair like a shed skin, the mirrors down both walls reflecting one tired boy with a lamp 100 times into the dark, and the palace ticks and settles around you, cooling, enormous, yours for 60 seconds. And then Yakov's voice from the far doorway, not unkind. The floor boy, not the mirrors, and you check your floor and go down and sleep 2 hours and rise at 4 because the stoves do not know what a ball is. That is November. That is the last month of the old world, though nobody has told the old world yet. The smell behind the Field Marshals Hall starts 11 days after the ball. December of 1837 comes down on Petersburg hard and glittering. The Neva sets solid in November and the sledge roads open across it, lines of little fir trees stuck in the ice to mark the ways. The season is at full blaze. The balls have begun, the courtyard fills nightly with carriages, and your wood quota climbs to the highest of the year, because the palace is now performing its great winter magic for all of Europe. Orange trees blooming indoors while the city outside cracks at -25, ballrooms at summer heat, and every degree of that miracle carried up the back stairs on the shoulders of men like you. 4 in the morning to 11 at night, until your shoulder has a permanent groove in it like a yoke-ox, and you sleep the sleep of the dropped stone. You are a different animal than the boy of January. You walk your entresol in the dark now, by smell and fingertip. You have your own new calf to shepherd, a boy from Tikvin district, practically your own village, whose hands bleed and who cries into his pillow, and you pretend not to hear, and across the dark you tell him it gets easier, and you hear in your own mouth Ilya's voice, and understand that this is how the palace remembers things, not on paper, but from cot to cot. November brings the night duty, and the night duty brings you 2 things: the closest you come all year to killing someone and the story of the water. Night duty works like this. From October, when the 2,000 fires are lit, the walls are never unwatched. In each section, one man sits the night through in the duty niche, a plank bench, a lamp, a charcoal brazier the size of a hat, a list of stoves. And twice between midnight and 4 he walks the whole section in the dark, listening at iron doors, laying his palm on tile faces, reading the buildings sleep. You draw your first solo night watch in the 2nd week of November, and Yakov hands you the list and the lamp and says only, "The palace talks at night. Learn its voice now, while it's saying nothing." And it talks. Holy God, does it talk. A great building cooling through a hard night is never silent. The parquet contracts overhead with sounds like knuckles cracking, one, then long minutes, then another, moving across a ceiling as if someone very patient were walking a floor where no one is. Wind works the chimney tops and makes the empty flues moan at the bottom of hearing, a sound more felt than heard, like a cathedral humming to itself. Mice run their own service corridors inside the wall, small and busy. Somewhere far off, a sentry's boots turn at the end of a beat, turn again. A clock strikes 3. Another, wrong as always, argues, and under all of it, if you hold your breath and press your ear to the brick, the faint, deep breath of the fires banked behind their doors, 40 of them in your section alone, each one alive, each one waiting, and you their only shepherd from midnight to dawn, 17 years old, with a tin lamp. On your 4th night watch, at some black hour, walk in the list. You come to stove 22, a footman's dormitory, 8 men asleep behind the wall, and your hand, laying itself flat on the service door out of trained habit, finds the iron warmer than it should be with the damper shut. You stop, you open the door, and there in the raked coals low down at the edge, one coal is dancing with blue. Blue flame with the damper shut. You will try later to remember deciding what to do, and you will find there was no deciding in it anywhere. There was Yakov's litany, installed in you like a bone. The damper stays open. You haul the damper rod full open and hear the flue take its first honest swallow. You rake the coals apart to bare their hearts, and 3 more blue ghosts flutter up and thin and die as the draught finds them. And then, because 8 men are sleeping on the other side of 18 inches of brick and you cannot know how long the door has been warm, you do the part that costs you. You go round by the service stair and knock and wake a dormitory of senior footmen, men who outrank you the way a cat outranks a mouse, and make them open their window transom to the November night, and stand there in the doorway in your soot and your 17 years, repeating the one sentence you have. The stove was closed on live coals, the fumes have no smell, air the room, while they curse you by every saint in the calendar. One of them throws a boot. The transom is opened. Nobody dies. The next evening Yakov hears the whole of it at the plank table. He has heard it already, of course, the walls having reported before you sat down, and he does not praise you, because that is not the shape of him. He asks one question: whose watch closed that damper on live coals? And you say, truthfully, that you don't know, and could not read it from the ash. And he looks at you for a long moment and says, I know, and it will be dealt with, and you will not ask. Then he pours half his tea into your glass, which in the currency of Yakov Grigorievitch is a decoration pinned to your chest before the assembled regiment, and old Matvey down the table raises his own glass 1 inch off the boards in your direction, and that is the whole ceremony, and no ceremony in the rebuilt palace's gilded halls will ever again feel that large to you. It is on the night watches, too, in the duty niche with the brazier, that you finally get the water story out of Matvey whole. You have heard its edges all year. The men speak of the flood the way your village speaks of the famine year, as a fixed point that time is measured from. And one November midnight, sharing your watch because his own sleep has grown thin as paper, Matvey tells it to the lamp, not to you, in the voice men use for the things they saw before you were born. November of 1824, he says, 13 years ago this month, a gale out of the west, out of the Gulf, 2 days of it, and the wind picked up the sea and carried it into the river's mouth, and the Neva, which cannot empty against such a wind, rose and rose. He was on the wood detail then, younger than Yakov is now. He watched from these very cellars as the water came up through the floors of the city. Not down the streets first, boy, up through the ground, the cellars filling like cupped hands, and then over the embankments in one grey moving wall. And by noon of the 7th of November there was sea where the streets had been, 14 feet of it in the low quarters, and Palace Square itself was a lake, with the wind tearing white caps off it. And boats, he says, striking the bench softly with his knuckles, rowed across the square where you walk today, between the palace and the arch, taking people off the lamp-posts and the roofs of sentry boxes. Barges came ashore in the streets. Coffins floated out of the cemetery ground. In the cellars here they lost the whole winter's wood. Tens of thousands of logs swimming in black water in the dark, and afterward, when it fell, the city stank of river mud till spring, and they counted the dead in the hundreds and stopped counting honestly. The old emperor Alexander stood at these windows and watched his capital drown, and they say he said aloud that against God there is no fighting. And Matvey is silent a while, and the brazier ticks, and then he says the thing he's been walking toward the whole story, and it lands on you like a hand. This house has stood in the sea, boy, to the first-floor windows. I dried these cellars with my own arms. Water we have had. He nods once slowly at the warm dark overhead, at the 1,500 rooms of it asleep on their 2,000 banked fires. It's the other thing I think about, on the long watches. She has been baptized. She has never yet been burned. Then he pulls his sheepskin closer and dozes, upright, the way old men can, and leaves you alone with the lamp and the palace talking quietly to itself in its sleep. And that sentence, which you will have particular cause to remember in 5 weeks, sitting in you like a coal. And in the 2nd week of December, your section of the walls develops a smell. You notice it first on the evening of the 12th or 13th, in the service spaces behind the Field Marshals Hall. The great white gallery hung with portraits of Russia's commanders, and near the small ballroom church side of that wing, it is faint. It comes and goes with the wind. It is not the honest smell of your stoves, not fresh birch smoke, which you know the way you know bread. It is older and meaner, a warm, creeping smell of heated soot, of smoke that has been somewhere it shouldn't, wandering in the walls, smoke without a fire to explain it. You report it. Of course you report it. You are Yakov's pupil. And here is the thing you will think about for the rest of your life. Everyone reports it. The flue behind the Field Marshals Hall smokes. It has smoked before. It is written down. Over those December days, the smell is noticed by stove men and hall porters and officers of the watch. Twice men are sent into the ducts. You are one of them. On your belly, with a lantern in the space behind the hall, you find warm brick. The old patched partition warmer than it should be. The creosote smell strong enough to sting. And no fire. Nothing to see. A palace-sized building full of 2,000 honest fires, and one thin thread of dishonest smoke that cannot be traced to any of them, appearing at evening, gone by morning. Masons come, look, order a patch replastered. The papers are all in order. The balls go on. What else should be done? The palace has stood 75 years. She is patient. Yakov is the only one who does not settle. Those last days you keep finding him standing in the service corridor with his palm flat against the wall, the way a man stands with his hand on the chest of someone whose breathing he does not like. He makes you close your section's dampers early those nights and rake the coals apart yourself, every stove, blue flame or no blue flame. On the 16th in the evening he stands a long time at the warm patch behind the hall, and then says, not really to you, in 12, when the French were in Moscow, I stood on this roof and watched the glow of Moscow burning in my mind's eye, 600 versts away, because every man in Petersburg was watching it, whether he could see it or not. He takes his hand off the wall and wipes the palm on his coat, slowly, as if wiping off what he felt. Go to bed, boy. Tomorrow is the 17th, and there's a service in the church in the morning, and the Emperor is at the theatre in the evening, and we'll have the ducts open again by Monday, and I will not be satisfied until I have that petition down to bare brick, papers or no papers. There is no Monday. The 17th of December, 1837, is a Friday. It is for 14 hours the most ordinary day of your whole palace year. Stoves at 4, ash by 7, kasha, tea, the samovar, Ilya, stealing your sugar. Double wood up the stairs for the evening, because the cold outside is deepening towards something serious. At dusk, the smell is back behind the Field Marshals Hall, and stronger, and at around 8 in the evening it stops being a smell. You're in the service corridor with a last sling of birch when a hall porter comes through the little door from the grand side, moving in a way that hall porters never move, and behind him, through the opened door, you see it with your own eyes across the width of the great hall. A fine grey haze in the candlelight standing in the air like breath in frost, and at the base of the wall, at the seam of a heating grill, smoke coming out in a slow, steady, purposeful ribbon, as if the wall itself had learned to exhale. What happens in the next hour you will spend the rest of your life fitting back together because you lived it in pieces at a run with a sling of firewood still on your shoulder for the first 10 minutes because your body forgot it was there. The alarm goes inward and downward through the palace faster than any bell. Doors, boots, shouted names. Palace grenadiers and firemen of the household command arrive with hand pumps and axes and wet sailcloth. They find the smoking seam. They break the wall open to get at it. And this, the men who understand fire will say forever after, with their hands over their eyes, is the moment. Because behind that lath and plaster, in the hidden space where the old chimney of one century leaned against the patched flue of another, the fire has already been living for hours, maybe for days, creeping, banked, starving slowly in the airless dark, and they open the wall and give it air. You're 2 rooms away, in the walls, when it takes its first breath. You hear it. You will never find the right words for the sound, and you will never stop trying. A soft, enormous whoomp, felt in the floor and the teeth more than heard, like a giant stove door slamming open instead of shut, and then a light under the service door such as no candle ever made, and then the fire stands up inside the winter palace and begins to run. It runs the roads, you know. That is the horror of it. And the reason you understand faster than almost anyone in the building what is about to happen. It runs your roads, the ducts, the flues, the hollow warm walls, the hidden vertical city that you have crawled and greased and fed all year. The fire pours through them like flood water through canals, behind the plaster, under the floors, over the gilded ceilings, moving invisibly past closed doors and bursting out in rooms far from any flame, so that men fighting it in one hall hear it laughing overhead in the next. 75 years of kiln-dried timber, miles of seasoned pine rafter under one roof, varnish, silk, wax, gilt on resinous wood. The palace does not catch fire, room by room, the way a house does. The palace, which has been drying on a warm stove for 3/4 of a century, recognises the fire as something it has been waiting for, and gives itself up floor by floor with a kind of terrible readiness. And through this, in the first hour, comes the strangest interval of your life, which is the saving. And in the middle of it, before the saving, comes your own worst quarter hour, and it belongs to the new boy. You're in the courtyard with the first bucket chains when your mind, running its lists the way a year of Yakov has taught it to run them, snags on a name, Grishka, the calf from Tikvin, sent up before 7, before any of it, to the far attic run above the hall side to close the season's last vent flaps, a 1-hour job for a boy who gets lost in a half-hour building. And he has not come down. You know he has not come down the way you know a stove is wrong through an iron door. No sighting, no voice. And the attic run he was sent to is 2 rooms lateral and 1 floor vertical from a wall that is now speaking in smoke. You tell a fireman who does not hear you. You tell an officer who is saving an empire and cannot spend a boy on a boy. So you spend yourself. And this is not courage, whatever Ilya says at the table for years afterward. You will always maintain, and it is true, that it was arithmetic. You're the only person on the square who knows which stairs go where, and the smoke was in the grand corridors, but the service runs are sealed off from them precisely so that no one ever sees you. And for once, for one night, invisibility runs in your favour. The hidden palace and the seen palace are 2 buildings. Only one of them is burning yet. So, the little door, the back stair, up into your own dark. The service run is smoky but breathable. The smoke lying along the ceiling in a moving grey river upside down, and you go under it at a crouch with your rag over your face, one hand on the wall, and the wall is the thing you will dream about, because the wall is warm, not stove warm, alive warm, fever warm. The whole inner wall of the run, plaster that should be winter cold, is blood heat under your palm and rising, and from inside it, from your ducts, comes a sound the palace has never made in your year of listening. A deep hollow rushing, like wind, like water, like a flue roaring with no stove under it. The fire running its errands through the walls beside you, one thickness of brick and lath away, keeping pace. The attic door is unbarred. The attic run is black and hot, and the smoke here is not a river along the ceiling, but a rising tide, and you shout his name into it and get nothing, and shout again, and then hear it. Not an answer. A knocking. Steady. Small. Off to the left. And you find him by his own training. The boy has done the one thing you taught him for being lost, which is stop, get low, and knock on wood, and he is jammed into the cold gap between a chimney breast and a rafter, with his shirt over his mouth, eyes white in a black face, and when your hand closes on his arm, he comes off the boards toward you like a hooked fish, and his first words, God keep him forever, his very first words are, I closed the flaps, Fyodor Stepanich, all 11. The way you came up is no longer a way. You feel it before you see it. The air of the stair door pushing out against you. Hot, wrong, a stove door and not a doorway. And this is where the year saves you both, because there is another way, and you know it. Because on a warm June night at the roof of the world, Ilya showed it to you for no reason but joy. The ladder, the little iron door, the roof. And so you go out onto the roof of the Winter Palace for the second and last time in your life, dragging a 14-year-old by the wrist, into December, into wind, into a light that no words you own will ever properly carry. The iron sheeting is not cold. Feel that in your boot soles and understand it. The roof of the largest palace on earth, in a December night at 20 below, is warm. Warm like a stove bench, ticking and pinging all around you in the dark, because the fire is below it now, coming up through the pine forests of the rafters and away along the ridge toward the hall side. The light is standing up out of the roof itself in 100 seams, the whole long landscape of iron valleys glowing at its joints like the top of an enormous banked stove, which is what it is, which is what it has become. The palace one single stove now, and you two standing on its lid. Sparks go over you horizontally on the wind, hissing where they touch the snow crusts in the gutters. The statues along the parapet stand black against the glare with their calm shoulders, lit from behind for the first time in 75 years. And below, on one side, the square. Torches, chains of men, the treasure heaps growing on the snow, the column rising red out of all of it with its angel catching the firelight, and on the other side the Neva. And you look, because even now, even here, you are you. The ice is glowing. Shore to shore, rose red, mile on mile, the frozen river reflecting the burning house of its masters all the way to the fortress where the emperors sleep. Grishka is praying beside you. Fast, the same 6 words over and over. You take him along the riverfront valley at a crouching run, boots skidding on warm iron, to the far pavilion stair, the one Ilya calls the quiet ladder, and it is clear, cold, blessedly cold, ordinary dark stone going down and down, and you come out of a ground-floor window bay into a snowdrift, and the hands of a Pavlovsky sergeant who swears at you with relief in it, and Grishka bursts into tears at last, at the safe end, the correct end, the only end where tears are any use, and you stand bent double with your hands on your knees, dragging the beautiful freezing air, and above you the roof you just crossed begins, at its far end, to fall in. You will not tell Yakov about the roof until spring. When you do, he is silent for a long time and then says only, 11 flaps, and shakes his head and never mentions it again. But he takes Grishka onto his own list the next week personally, the first new boy he has trained in 9 years, and everyone in the cellar understands the sentence that was never said. Because the Winter Palace does not burn in secret, and it does not burn unattended. The Emperor's at the theatre when word reaches him, and he does what everyone in the cellar always said he does. He comes to the fire. He is in the building within the hour, enormous, bareheaded half the time, giving orders in that pendulum voice while the ceilings smoke. And his first orders are not about the palace at all. Get the children out. Get the Empress's people out. Muster the battalions. And then the order that turns 3,000 soldiers and servants, you among them, into a single desperate machine. Save what can be carried. And so begins the great carrying, and you are in it. And it is the maddest scene that any square in Europe has beheld in your lifetime. Guardsmen of the Preobrazhensky and Pavlovsky regiments, footmen in silk stockings, stove tenders black to the eyes, cooks, clerks, grooms, thousands of hands, and through the doors and windows of the burning palace comes pouring the inside of an empire. Portraits of field marshals cut whole from their frames with bayonets, and walked out flat like stretchers. The imperial silver in baskets, in tablecloths, in soldiers' arms. Porcelain passed hand to hand down human chains. Chandeliers lowered on their own ropes. The Empress's jewels, the archives. The icons from the chapel, carried out with bare heads bowed even while the windows above rain glass. And all of it, this is the picture you will die still seeing, all of it laid out on the snow of Palace Square, around the base of the Alexander Column, in the light of the burning building, mirrors and marble tables and heaps of silver and rolled paintings and gilt chairs standing in ranks on the trampled snow at -20 something. A whole palace turned inside out and set down under the winter stars, and almost nothing stolen. That detail will go around the world in the newspapers, and it happens in front of you. Mountains of treasure on an open square all night, guarded half by soldiers and half by nothing but the occasion itself. Your own part is small, and you do it at the top of your lungs and the end of your strength. You know the back ways, that is your treasure, and so for 2 hours, maybe 3, you are a guide, leading chains of soldiers by service stairs the smokers not found yet, in and out, your wet rag frozen to your face, your eyebrows singed off somewhere in the second hour without your noticing, your hands full of, at various moments, a malachite bowl, an armload of French books, a clock the size of a dog, a rolled carpet that takes 4 men, and once, unforgettably, a bird cage with a live parrot in it, screaming bonjour into the smoke, the heat on one side of your body and the never cold on the other, so that you're burning and freezing at once and cannot tell any more which cheek is which. The sound of it filling the whole sky, a river roar with artillery in it, floors coming down inside, each collapse a boom you feel through the square itself, each one sending up a slow tower of sparks that the wind lays out over the city like a red banner. Somewhere past midnight comes the moment they will tell for 100 years, and you are close enough to see it. In one of the last accessible halls, a crowd of guards, your own countrymen, peasant boys in uniform, are fighting to unbolt an enormous mirror from the wall while the ceiling overhead answers them in smoke. And the Emperor, seeing men risk their lives for glass, wades in and ends the argument in the only language the knight will hear. He smashes the mirror himself. With a field glass with a candlestick, the story will vary forever, but you see the blow and you hear it, a great flat crash, and shouts over the raw words to the size of, "Lads, your lives are worth more than any mirror. Out." And out they go. It is possible he saves 20 lives in that one gesture. It is certain that every man in the square has the story by morning, and that your grandchildren will not believe you when you tell them you heard the mirror break. Yakov you find, after an hour of not letting yourself think the thought, on the square, on a gilt chair from some drawing room, planted in the snow among the rescued furniture like a guest at the end of the world's strangest ball. Ilya found him in the smoke on the entresol, going back in a third time for men who were already out, and dragged him bodily to the air by the collar, cursing him, Ilya, cursing Yakov, an act previously outside the laws of nature. The old man's beard is scorched on one side, and his lungs sound like a flue brush going through a dirty chimney, and he will not go to the infirmary line, and so the three of you stand there together in the snow, in the light, with 10,000 other people, and watch it. Because by 2 a.m. there is nothing left to do but watch, and all of Petersburg does. The fire has the whole vast building now end to end, 450 feet of it, and the flames stand up over the roofline the height of the palace, again above itself, and the smoke column leans across the stars, and the glow is seen. You will learn afterward and believe it instantly, from villages 50 versts away, from ships at sea. The Neva ice glows rose-coloured across its whole width. The gilded needle of the Admiralty beside you catches the light and burns without burning. The crowd is enormous and almost silent. People are weeping quietly all around you, men and women, counts and cab drivers, ranks dissolved again for the second time in 1 year. Next to you, an old woman crosses herself over and over and says not to anyone, "The house of the Tsars, the house of the Tsars," and you stand between Yakov and Ilya with your burned face and your ruined hands, and what breaks you finally is not the flames. It is the stoves. In the highest windows, as the floors go, you can see for a moment straight through the building, and there, standing in the fire, glowing, are the white tile stoves, your stoves, 41 and 60, and the modest one from the small study, standing at their posts in the middle of the inferno like the last soldiers of a lost army, because tile and brick will not burn, and when the walls have gone, the stoves will still be standing in the snow. Firekeepers of a house of fire. You put your face into your scorched sleeve, and Yakov's enormous ruined hand lands on the back of your neck, exactly where it landed on your first day, and holds on, and neither of you says anything, because there is nothing in the Russian language for it, and you both know all the words there are. The Winter Palace burns for 30 hours. When it is over, the stone shell stands gutted from cellar vaults to sky. Windows like open mouths, snow falling into ballrooms. Not one of the great treasures is lost. The square saved them. The dead are counted in the tens, not the thousands. Soldiers and firemen mostly lost in the collapses, and each name goes around the cellars like a bell. And on the first morning, while the ruin still smokes, the Emperor drives past it, looks at it for a long moment with the pewter eyes, and issues in that even voice the decree that no one in Europe will believe until it happens. The palace will be rebuilt, exactly as it was, and the court will keep Easter in it, not in 10 years, in 15 months, and that, though you cannot know it on the square, is the door your future walks through. The days after the fire have a strange, scoured brightness in your memory, like the light on snow after a storm. The court moves to the Anichkov Palace up the Nevsky. The rescued empire on the square is carted piece by piece into the Admiralty and the Hermitage wing for safekeeping, and the Hermitage itself, the treasure house next door with its paintings, has survived, because in the middle of the fire men did a plain brutal thing that worked. They bricked and blocked the connecting passages, hung soaked sailcloth, hosed the walls, and simply refused to let the fire cross. Some of the hands that carried those wet cloths were stove tenders' hands. 2 of them were yours. It is the only part of that night you allow yourself privately on the very bottom shelf of your heart to be proud of. The fire ran your roads all night, but at the Hermitage Passage your people stood in its road and it stopped. The inquiry comes, as inquiries do, with green tables and clerks and beautiful ink. You're questioned once for 10 minutes by an officer of engineers who asks you exact and intelligent questions about the smell behind the Field Marshals Hall and writes your answers without once looking at you. The finding, when it filters down to the cellars, is the finding you already knew on your belly in July. The flu. The patched partition between the ages of the palace. The heat of 1 century's system, leaking for years into the hidden timber of another's, past a gap reported and reported and reported, until December found the one evening when smoulder became flame. No villain, no incendiary, no thunderbolt, a seam, a draught that made a candle lean. Paperwork in perfect order, 3 reports deep. Yakov hears the finding read aloud at the plank table. They are still feeding you all. The kitchens of an emperor do not stop for the end of the world. And he says nothing at all, and gets up and goes out into the yard, and stands there in the cold alone for a long time, and no one follows him, because some rooms a man must heat by himself. And then, Petersburg being Petersburg, and Nicholas being Nicholas, the ruin turns overnight into the largest building site on earth, and you discover that the fire has not ended your world. It has enlarged it. The emperor's 15 months mean that everything happens at once, and at double pay, up to 8,000-10,000 men on the site through 1838. Masons and carpenters and gilders from every province, scaffolding filling the gutted shell like a forest growing indoors, bonfires in the roofless halls, work through the winter with the walls heated to dry the plaster, and who understands heating a giant? Who has crawled every duct of the old system and can say where the bodies were buried in the walls? Old men with scorched beards and their 17-year-old pupils, that's who. Yakov spends that year as a kind of grey oracle, led from architect to architect, jabbing his ruined finger at drawings. And the new palace, when it rises, and this you will tell forever with your hand on your heart, rises different where it matters. Iron beams into the roofs where the pine forests were, brickwork between the halls like ships' bulkheads, and, in time, a new heating altogether, great furnaces of the engineer Mossoff breathing warm, clean air up masonry shafts, a system built by men who stood on the square that night and swore the one oath everyone swore, never again this. You will serve the new system 20 years. You will hate it a little, loyally, the way a man hates his second horse for not being his first. It will never once try to kill anyone. You will never fully forgive it for that either. But all that is to come. The year of our story closes earlier and smaller than that, and it closes like this. It is a night at the very end of December, 1837, 2 weeks after the fire. You are quartered now with the other palace people in temporary rooms by the stables. The burned shell stands 2 streets away under the stars with snow sifting into it, and you cannot sleep, which has been true most nights since. And so you get up quietly and dress and go out and walk to the square, because your feet take you there the way feet take a man to a grave, and you stand at the foot of the Alexander column, alone in the enormous cold, and look at the black windows. And here, at the end, is what you think, standing in the snow where the mirrors and the marshals lay. And this is where I hand the thinking over to you, listener, because his thoughts at the column are the same size as yours on the pillow, and they will carry you both the same direction, which is down and toward rest. You think, I was afraid all year of being invisible, and it turned out that invisible was another word for load-bearing. Nobody who danced above your head ever knew your name, and yet every warm minute of every one of their nights passed through your hands first. The Countess grieved warm because your legs climbed. The Emperor slept on straw because your fire held. The House of the Tsars floated on the swan-black water of your kind's labour for 75 years, and when it fell, it was your kind who carried its whole heart out onto the snow, and stood over it till morning without stealing a spoon, and your kind who will carry it back in. There are 2 palaces, and there always were. The one made of stone that anyone can see, and the one made of hands, which is the one that actually stands. You live in the second one. It did not burn. It cannot. You think about the boy from Tikhvin who cried into his pillow in this city 1 year ago, and you look for him in yourself the way you'd feel a pocket for a coin, and he is still there. He flinched tonight when a roof slate cracked in the frost, but he is not in charge any more. The one in charge knows every stove in a palace that no longer exists, which sounds like a joke and is actually an inheritance, because they are going to build it again, and someone will have to teach the new walls how to be warm, and that someone has your hands. The cold finally gets past the sheepskin, the honest way, and turns you home. You walk back through streets blue with starlight, past windows where other stoves are drawing, other tenders work. The whole frozen city kept alive tonight by 10,000 small fires behind iron doors, each one watched by someone tired. You let yourself into the warm dark of the stable quarters. You pull off your boots. You lie down on the narrow cot under the sheepskin, and the room is full of the breathing of sleeping men, and somewhere among them Yakov's chest goes like a soft old flue brush, in and out, alive, and Ilya murmurs something in his sleep that is probably a joke. And now let it come. You're warm enough, fed enough, alive enough. You have a roof, even a borrowed one, and work that matters, and 2 men in this dark room who went into smoke where you were and would again. And that is more than most souls in this world are given, and that is enough. That's enough. It's enough. Let the year settle over you like the sheepskin. Let the square empty. Let the black windows fill with snow. Let the fire which ran all your roads run them one last time backwards, out of the rafters, out of the walls, back down the flues, back behind the little iron doors, back to sleep. Let your hands, which have carried wood and ash and silver and one indignant French-speaking parrot, lie open on the blanket and carry nothing. Let your thoughts bank down the way you bank a stove for the night, raked apart, checked once, checked twice, no blue flame anywhere, safe now, safe, and the damper easing shut. Tomorrow there will be wood to move. Tomorrow there will be walls to warm and a palace to raise, and a green calf from Tikveen asking you how the flues run. But that's tomorrow. Tomorrow is on the other side of the river of sleep, and the ice on that river bears any weight at all. Centuries will pass. The palace they rebuild in 15 months will turn green and white above the Neva and stand into ages its rebuilders could not imagine. The empire itself will fall the way the ceilings fell, in fire and noise, and other flags will fly from the staff on the roof, and the halls you heated will fill with paintings and tourists and school children from countries that do not exist yet, and hardly any of the millions who walk the Jordan staircase will ever once think of the men inside the walls. The stoves will go cold forever. The ducts will stand empty and dark and clean. But people will still live in that cold city, still cross that frozen river, still come in at night stamping the snow off, hands aching, faces burning, to whatever warmth is theirs, still hold their palms out to it, still fall asleep at the end of long unwitnessed work, in narrow beds, in the great dark, the same as you, the same as Fyodor on his cot by the stables in the last nights of 1837, the same as all the tired, load-bearing, invisible people in all the winters stretching back and forward out of sight. Some things don't change. The cold doesn't change. The need for fire doesn't change. And the rest at the end of the carrying, that doesn't change either. So let sleep take you the way the warmth takes a frozen room, slowly from the middle outward, without any effort of yours at all. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You've earned this rest. Somebody watch the coals for you tonight. Take it. Good night.